Now that we've fixed the basic ideas of bills of exchange, I want to tell you some more of their features that made these simple instruments so widely circulated. Bills of exchange have a few key features that add to their sophistication and flexibility. So first, bills of exchange can be endorsed, which allows them to be circulated to other people. Second, there's a feature of a bill of exchange called joint liability that actually aligns the incentives of the bill and allows them to be circulated as far as they were and in very long endorsement chains. Finally, bills of exchange can be sold and discounted. You might have heard the word securitized before. Bills of exchange can be securitized in this way. We'll talk about how the price, though, of these bills could be set in such circumstances. So first, bills of exchange can be endorsed. What you see in picture here on the right is the back of a bill of exchange, and what you see here are a set of signatures. This is the endorsement process. So here's what this means. We've just outlined our example of a shirt maker that needs to move money from the future to the present by using a bill of exchange in order to obtain yarn from a spinning factory. The spinning factory now holds this bill of exchange, can use it like money in a variety of ways. So first, the spinning factory, who is our drawer or payee, can use this bill in future transactions by endorsing it and passing it on to someone else. So the endorsement will say, I give up my right to be paid and I'm giving it to somebody else. If the shirt maker is actually dependable, right? If the shirt maker is going to pay up once they sell their shirts, then this bill can circulate as good as money. So let's outline how this is going to work. So suppose the spinning factory wants to pay someone else using this bill. The spinning factory will flip it over, write their name on the back of the bill, and they become therefore an endorser. The spinning factory is now going to give this bill to its new owner. And then when date X, the due date, comes up, that new owner will end up being paid. What makes endorsements work in the first place is the fact that bills of exchange have a feature called joint liability. What this means is that when that spinning factory signs their name on the back, they also become liable for the bill. Okay, now look, if the shirt maker just pays on schedule and everything goes as I outlined on the last slide, there's no problem. We don't need to worry about joint liability. Everything's fine. But where this is interesting is if the shirt maker doesn't pay, right? If the shirt maker turns out to be a scofflaw or just they make shirts and they're terrible and they can't sell them. Okay, what happens then is that the spinning factory, because they've endorsed the bill, they now have to pay the endorsee. The spinning factory has to pay the person that they gave the bill to, okay? So if you accept a bill through endorsement, you know you're going to get paid either by the original drawee or the endorser that gave you the bill. These chains of endorsement could be really, really, really long. Now, how this is enforced, can be in court, right? So this is all recognized. You can track people down. But what's really cool, right, is that you probably know who the endorser is for you. And so you can track that person down and you can be sure that you get paid. Now, if that endorser wants to track someone else down in the further, right, in the chain, that's their business, but they have to pay up. And I think you can see why, therefore, people would be willing to accept an endorsed bill like this. It really gives them flexibility. Okay, but endorsement is not the only way that bills of exchange could circulate and be useful. So let's return back to our simple example. So consider the shirt maker, the drawee, that's going to buy inputs from the spinning factory, again, our drawer. So again, the spinning factory is now going to hold on to this bill. They have this piece of paper. But here's the thing. They are not required to just sit there and wait for the money to come to them. They can endorse the bill, as we've already said, or they can get cash for this bill. They can sell the bill to another party by endorsing the bill to that other party and just get a cash payment. Often, the party that they would that they would endorse this bill to in order for cash would be a bank. This is one of the main functions of banks, especially before the 20th century, is this process of discounting bills of exchange. Now, the bank is willing to do this because there's a potential for profit in doing this. So think about how much the bank would be willing to pay in cash for the bill. The amount the bank is willing to pay is going to decrease in the riskiness of the first payer, the shirt maker, and potentially any other endorsers on the bill. And the amount the bank is willing to pay is also going to decrease in how long they have to wait to get paid. The bank is willing to accept risk because of how well it's diversified, and the bank is patient. This is what makes banks a business, right? They basically take advantage of our impatience and our intolerance for risk, and that's how a bank makes a profit. So when the bank buys the bill, they give the person that sold the bill to them less cash than the face value of the bill, and the bank waits for the bill to actually be realized and get paid the full amount. And that gives the bank the ability to make a profit. And this worked. So this is a map from the Santa Rosa paper. By the way, Veronica Santa Rosa was a classmate of mine at Yale. We're pretty good friends, and she teaches at Michigan Law School now. So this is from her paper in the Journal of Economic History, where she actually maps out how far bills circulated. So Veronica, when she was in grad school, she went to archives all over Europe, and she did something that nobody had really done before, which is she collected original bills of exchange and mapped out how far they went and how they worked. And she found that they circulated really far and could have long endorsement chains. This all sounds great, but I do want to stress, however, that bills of exchange had their set of limitations. Bills of exchange are perfect for the kinds of medium-sized and medium-term transactions that I've described here thus far. They are not so good for paying for workers who want cash immediately or for long-term large purchases. So this is critical. I don't want to see anybody saying that a bill of exchange could be used to buy a steam engine. It's too big. Bills of exchange were not very good for buying steam engines and other large investments because such investments are better to be paid kind of slowly over time in some more sophisticated method or through another kind of exchange. So something really interesting about the Industrial Revolution is that, there's not a lot of investment going on through loans or stock markets. So how did firms buy large investments like steam engines? What they would do, that we now understand, is they would form partnerships. So someone who has know-how, say, for example, they know how to make shirts, would get in partnership with someone who had a lot of money, like a wealthy landowner. And that wealthy landowner would give money for the firm to buy the steam engine, but in exchange, they get control over the enterprise. These kinds of partnerships were really common in the Industrial Revolution. I've mentioned you already, furthermore, the way that bills of exchange had an important interaction with banks. So once again, until the 20th century, one of banks' most important functions was this process of discounting bills of exchange. Your reading by Smith mentions some of this. So it is chiefly by discounting bills of exchange, that is, by advancing money upon them before they are due, that the greater part of banks and bankers issues their promissory notes. So once again, why is there a market for this kind of discounting? Banks are less risk-averse and have longer horizons than individuals. And so banks can, again, use these features of themselves and features of common people in order to make a profit by keeping the bills until their date of maturity. And things like this explain why banks in general are able to make a profit. This is the bank's business. And a little bit, I'm going to talk to you about some other kind of versions of bills of exchange that allow for additional flexibility. So loans that the banks could give would be either through promissory notes, which are simplified bills of exchange, or sometimes they would provide loans by collateral, which is something else that Smith describes in The Wealth of Nations. And this now circulates all the way back to Northern Wine Gas. So you probably noticed in Northern Wine Gas discussion of the Bank of England, what they said is that the Bank of England was so helpful because of its prominent role in discounting bills of exchange. And so that's what this means. Something else that is interesting in your Smith reading, which I really enjoy, is his description of the way that, like many financial instruments, bills of exchange could be used to promote various kinds of funny business. So here's the shady agreement that Smith describes. We have two businesses that are going to enter this questionable agreement. So let's suppose I'm one of these people. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a bill on you for some amount. Okay, and we'll agree on this. And I'm going to go discount it and get cash in my hands. I'm also going to agree to let you draw a bill on me in 2 years so that then you can go and discount it. Cool. We're both going to get cash from this discounting, which is great. We can live large in the present. This is called raising money by circulation. So these bills that we've drawn that neither of us really has an intention to pay on are currently being held by the poor bank that discounted it for us. Now the bank, if they know that I'm a shady character, or they find out after the fact that I'm a shady character, if they know that it's a bad bill, what should the bank do? Well, they should kind of try to do the same thing. They should try to get rid of it. They should find some other poor sucker or some other poor bank who doesn't know and discount it, and they can hold the cash. The bill now is going to become a hot potato. And then look, anybody who's endorsing this bill along the way and knows that it's a hot potato, they're doing bad and they can get in trouble with the law. But see, what I'm going to do and what you're going to do is we're going to get on a boat and we're going to go to America. And they're not going to find us. Okay, and so somebody's going to hold this hot potato. They're going to try to keep suing up the chain, but ultimately the original drawees, we've hit the road. So this is a way you can promote funny business with bills. And another reason why the joint liability aspect of the bill of exchange is really critical. Now, as I've just noted, right, Smith notes that some banks, they might have actually participated in circulation schemes like this perfectly happily. And banks that did this and eventually might have failed because of having too many bad bills would have had real effects on the economy, right? And we know that bank collapses can have reverberant effects on other firms. I mean, it's just getting rid of the capacity to create loans and otherwise discount bills of exchange. So Smith was very suspicious of these kinds of banks, right? The operation of a bad bank increases the real distress of the country, which it might have been meant originally to relieve. And, I really like talking about this because, I'm a child of the recent financial crisis, and it certainly sounds a lot like other cases that we may know of where people playing games with financial instruments cause general distress. So these kinds of games, this funny business has been with humanity. It's since the beginning, okay? So it's not a new phenomenon. I also just wanted to share with you some funny stories. So bills of exchange, you've never heard of them. And I had never heard of them before becoming an economic historian. But they were commonplace and part of everyday life. And a way that you can really drive this home is by looking at a couple of these quotations from this great book by Sergei Antonov, who's a history professor at Yale, called Bankrupts and Usurers of Imperial Russia. And he paints these portraits of these, middle-class folks and noble people who would have these giant parties. Like, here's a picture of a giant party here, where they would get drunk and play cards. Okay, so this is the image you have in your mind. And what they would do is just start to write bills of exchange to each other to pay their gambling debts. So check out these quotes. So a other young merchant, Vasily Pegov, son of a prominent Moscow industrialist, drank and partied so much that his father eventually expelled him out of his house, after which Vasily began to forge bills of exchange in his father's name. And then here's another one. While drunk, Klimov wrote 7 backdated bills of exchange for different persons and different dates and to different persons. So these were such a common part of life that people tried to do funny business with them, just like you might hear people trying to do funny business with modern checks. All right, so going forward, what I'm going to show you are some variations of bills of exchange and also some other common financial instruments and common ways of using financial markets, especially before the Industrial Revolution. So first, bills of exchange could be simplified to form what are called promissory notes, which you might have heard of already. And there's some other very common ways that folks use financial markets to get things done that, again, you might never have heard of or you might have seen in practice but called by another name. So that's where we're going next.